what's the difference between real estate and construction?
We all ask the same question because it sounds the same.
It's the built and the unbuilt environment. So when we talk real estate, we're talking about assets that are already existing. And then when you speak construction, it's actually bringing assets off the ground which don't exist.
All right, it's a Brawl podcast in collaboration with Amedzo where we talk about the things that matter. So we're talking about the Big Five construct Southern Africa. The amount of information in the past 3 days has just been amazing, I tell you. And if you haven't been here, you better start making your way here. It's never too late. Come and see what it means to be in the construction industry, not only in Southern Africa, but let's talk about Africa at large. And right now I'm joined by a very interesting panel, and we'll be talking about, all the different aspects that make the construction industry come together, the built environment actually come together. So I've got a face that is not exactly new to you, our viewers. Let's talk about Mansi. Welcome, Mansi. Good to see you.
Nice to be back. Thank you.
Nice to be back indeed. And then we have Bathobile. Bathobile, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank
you for joining us. Yeah. And then to my immediate right, we've got the gentleman. He's the only gentleman in this podcast, by the way. The other podcasts that I've been having, it's been all gentlemen around me. So in this case, you're very blessed to have women around you. And then you are the only man here. It's very nice for you, isn't it?
It is very nice.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We're talking about Mitesh, Bhawan. Thank you so much for being with us here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah. So, the Big Five Construct Southern Africa has just been an absolutely phenomenal event, if I must say. Something very impactful, informative, and inspiring as well, to build our economies with regards to the construction and the built environment industry, or whatever you might want to call it. But Mansi, let me start with you. The last time we had a conversation, we were actually prepping our viewers to come to this particular event. But we are here right now. What can you say about this event as it stands right? You've had some plenary sessions, you had a Q&A session. How have people been welcoming, to this particular conference?
My gosh, Yvonne, I have to say it is buzzing here today. I think I've walked the floor, I've walked outside, it's spilling over everywhere. I'm a bit of a tech geek, so I've really enjoyed the machinery. Boys and toys, it's actually girls and toys. There's quite a lot at this expo. A lot of tech, a lot of innovation, thought leadership. I mean, we've had panels with Mitesh, with Jason, with Bathobile, and you're really, really seeing the intersection of real estate and construction coming together as one. So it's been fantastic. Fantastic. If anybody is still on the way, definitely it is still worth coming through.
Right? So I like what you said. You've been around the floor and then you've seen a lot of interesting, innovative machinery, technology. So does this speak to an improvement, a brighter future within the built environment?
Well, they better be, because we won't stand for anything less. We're very demanding, I think, as users. But it's also that demand that is driving the business case around innovation and the progression. We want to have things faster, better quality, at affordable and sustainable prices. We're not living in a bubble. Things cost money, but it has to be worth it. So the use case is really compelling, and I think this is the value of the expo. You get to have an interaction in a low-pressure environment, experience, dip in it, shop around like a little bit, and see what works for us.
Yeah. All right. And then, Bathobile, you work with everybody, literally, because I know that in this built environment, the construction industry, there's a lot of arms that brings it together. You literally work with almost every aspect of this, right? So being here this time around, the Big Five construct Southern Africa. In fact, I must say that a very big congratulations to Broll Properties, because they are joining this particular Big Five in the 10th year anniversary of it. Now, having said that, we are bringing something new, and that speaks to innovation within the industry. We are bringing more of the real estate side together with the construction side. What does this mean for you?
I think it's an important question, because one of the things that someone asked me is, what's the difference between real estate and construction?
We all ask the same question because it sounds the same. Real estate, construction,
Yeah.
But in actual fact, it's not, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's not. And so the differences between the two is that it's the built and the unbuilt environment. So when we talk real estate, we're talking about assets that are already existing. And then when you speak construction, it's actually bringing assets off the ground which don't exist. And so, today has been really awesome in that we've brought together people who are end users, people who occupy these buildings, with the people who are actually designing and planning, and the architects and the construction field. And so it's really been a lovely synergy to see how these two worlds actually work together. We've shared insights, we've had lovely discussions around how we can use the tech, how we can work more together, and how this is a really important relationship going forward in order to build a real estate industry that serves communities, that serves the people who are going to be living there for many years to come. And so it's been such a day of robust conversations.
Okay, so does this mean that you get to inform the constructors of maybe the people's immediate needs in terms of the innovation and construction that we will see going forward?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so, what we brought today was the perspective of the end users. And sometimes in the construction world, they don't actually interact with the people who are using their buildings 10, 15 years from now and experiencing what it's like and the challenges of changing these spaces, retrofitting them. And so it was interesting to actually have those conversations and bring those two worlds together.
I like that. You speak of the end user. So as the end user, there's a lot of expenses that also come being an end user, whether it's in the commercial space or even residential space. So I think that brings you there in, Mitesh. You come in with an innovation that really speaks to saving. Who doesn't want to know about saving? I want to save money. So I'm really happy that I'm sitting here with you today. I definitely want to save money. Any business wants to save money. Yeah. But can you just give me a brief of your portfolio first?
So we run a portfolio called the Broll Energy, Water and Sustainability that tackles the issues not only in the property sector. I think in any real estate environment, we are talking to farming communities as well on how we can assist with energy management, water management and waste management. What we can do with the waste and educating, just educating everyone around what it is, what's the possibilities, whether it be a technology opportunity, an efficiency opportunity. It was mentioned time saving, how we can integrate all of these things to ultimately create more sustainability in that specific sector.
Okay, so here we go. Right now, South Africa is crippling from the Eskom challenge. We are all complaining about an energy crisis that has crippled the country, okay? So it brings with it, again, some additional challenges, whether machinery is then damaged in the process. And I must say that South Africa, for the longest time, has never experienced an energy crisis like the one that we're seeing right now. So which means that people had not really adopted to this. So people are trying to adopt to this. In the opening plenary session, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure actually said that he gave some stats. One of them was that there's about 41% of water that is lost within construction. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a huge number. How does that happen without anybody managing it? Then he also addressed the issue of the energy crisis, which has literally affected everything. So you come in with some special innovation. So what are we looking at here?
So we've looked at a lot of buildings that we look at in South Africa are not as well insulated as they could be. So we see it from an energy profile point of view. So when you look at energy consumption from month to month, we see that in the winter months, the house or the building uses more energy than in the summer months, and that's directly linked to the cold temperature and the environmental conditions where this property is located. And we've brought some innovation in the form of retrofitting. So this is a phase change material blanket, which basically the objective of the blanket is to put the blanket into the above the roof sheets or in between the panels that they've got, the drop-in ceilings, etc., to help maintain the temperature so that the temperature doesn't fluctuate, so the HVAC and the heating, ventilation and cooling systems don't have to operate as frequently, and the temperature variation is not as drastic as we see with the winter and summer months. Over and above that, we've got a cold chain product as well. So the cold chain product is basically, if you break it down, it's basically a ice block. If you have a freezer,
Okay, this is an ice block.
it's basically an ice block, but so what it would do is if you put it in your freezer, the liquid inside would freeze. Now the liquid is not water. The liquid is actually, again, a phase change material that we tailor to the temperature requirement of the fridge. So if you want to keep your fridge or freezer at a certain temperature for a certain amount of hours, we develop the liquid specifically for those conditions. And basically what will happen is it's like a thermal battery. It will freeze, and then when there's no energy, it will basically absorb the heat, or you can call it absorbing heat or release cooling, whichever way you want to look at it, but that's what it does. So it maintains the temperature of the freezer, and it works well in the entire cold chain, the trucks, etc. Everything that uses energy to cool or keep product cooler, and keep these products under their compliance conditions in terms of temperature, to make sure that the product actually lasts in your fridge when you buy it from a supermarket or from a store, that it actually lasts as long as it's supposed to, because that's the current issue. Current issue is that we've got facilities that need to run on diesel. Is there an opportunity if your facility...
Which is expensive, by the way.
It's actually, if you look at property, it's the only variable cost that property owners are faced with. It's the water and the electricity as variable cost. The rest of the stuff is all very much flat. So you'll have your rent per square meter, you'll have your occupancy cost. The only big variable cost is utilities.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to you, Mansi. Facility management. I'm sure you've received quite a number of complaints, concerns. The on and off of this electricity, it damages some stuff there, right? So
Yeah.
does this help make your work a bit more easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Mitesh is talking about is really around stabilizing the environment, so that your mechanical equipment is working less heavily, the demand is less. So the less that it has to work, the less you have to have breakdowns, maintenance, etc. So if we think about something like, let's say the generators, for example, at the moment we were running with generators that were not designed to essentially be a power source, an on-time power source. So you're running like 12 hours a day, maybe at stage 6, whereas this thing is supposed to be for incidental blackouts or power outages. Yeah. So the amount of wear and tear that is happening on generators, I mean, it's astronomical. So you're talking about a diesel cost, but you're also seeing a lot of higher frequency of interventions than required in terms of maintenance, because you hit your 150 hours a lot more frequently of use now. So the cost to the landlord is, and then gets passed on to the user, can become debilitating for a business.
That's it. Yes, and I was actually going to come to you again and ask you that. Convenience comes at a cost, and she speaks about that. The end user always has to bear the brunt of the cost. So does this minimize the cost?
Well,
does it add on to the cost?
We're working with a very large retailer at the moment, where we are talking to them about switching off their generators at night, because ultimately their generators are only there to keep their refrigerators cool and cold, and their product at temperature. So if we are able to do that, then we're able to switch off their energy requirements at night. Now, if we get through when we get through the load shedding, let's call it the load shedding period or load shedding stage of our lives and in our country, it's possibly a long-term initiative for this particular retailer, where they might not even need to have all their electricity requirements being met from the grid. So we could disconnect even the refrigerators from the immediate grid at night as well, to have that type of control, which will help not only the grid that we so dearly need, but it will also help the overall cost of running that store. And the thing about all of our products is, and what we try to do is, if we can provide a solution for one store, and you replicate that across 1,000, those numbers become very big.
Okay,
And
okay.
it's very big not only for the owner, the owner of the store, or the franchisee, or whatever the case is, but from our grid perspective and our requirements from our national grid, it has a big impact, and that's what we're looking at, especially in buildings. A lot of buildings. You can drive around Sandton and look at all the buildings that are left on, lights that are left on at night. I mean, that doesn't tell you that we were in stage 6 load shedding. So how do we help the buildings manage and control their buildings a lot better and a lot more intuitively, so that they won't have to use that amount of energy when nobody's in the building.
Yeah.
And that energy can be repurposed and help with our current issue on demand from our generators.
Yeah, that's
And
it.
I suppose,
No, but-
Mitesh, what you're also saying is if you're able to switch off the power at night, it means that because you don't have that kind of heat or chill loss, your HVAC, when it comes on at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, it has to work that much less to get you to that ideal temperature, and then your BMS says, okay, sharp, calm down for the day.
Yeah, and if you multiply that effect across, let's say 450 shopping centers.
Yeah.
I'm just using the shopping centers as an example, but if you multiply the multiplier effect of interventions on this magnitude leads to a much larger demand saving, much larger energy saving, which is, if you look at how energy is generated, I mean, the amount of generation you need in order to supply you with 1 unit of energy is, you mentioned 40% of water is lost.
Being lost, yeah.
So
in the process,
it's
yeah.
if you work out the equivalent in terms of energy from coal and
To renewable energy?
well, no,
Not
the amount
necessarily?
of coal that
Okay.
you need to generate 1 unit, it's 3
Okay.
times more.
Okay.
So if we save at the source, it means that the production goes down by by a lot.
Okay.
So it's like
Well,
demand
Bathobile,
management.
what's your
Yes.
take on green compliant, maybe infrastructure, if I may put it?
I think one of the debates we were having is around the cost to actually put this infrastructure in. And the key question was, there's such a big cost up front. How do you make the decision between outlaying the capital up front versus actually continuing with what you're doing? And it all comes back to savings, right? So who doesn't want to save and actually spend less on their money?
Yeah.
And so, there's always going to be a debate around green initiatives and how much they cost. But actually, you've got to look at it in a different way around what does this mean in the long run?
Okay.
What are the actual savings in my portfolio that I can use that capital elsewhere to do other things? And so it'll always be a good thing in terms of saving the planet and actually being more sustainable in terms of our practices. But, I think more and more of these initiatives are being sought out by the market, and we'll continue to see more innovation in this space.
Okay, so is this... Okay, go ahead, please.
I think just to add on to what Bathobile is saying is that there are also many initiatives where specific companies that are selling products will basically back their product in a way that they will self-fund it. So if you're looking at performance contracting of technology, there's a very specialized field in South Africa, actually pioneered in South Africa, measurement and verification of energy savings, where you measure and verify the potential savings of interventions and then are able to track it. So it requires a whole lot of knowledge and IoT devices to be able to track those variables that impact on that consumption. But once you're able to quantify the savings, you are then able to bank and get funding for those initiatives. So it might necessarily not be that you have to outlay the capital up front. You might get the entity and get funding to fund it based on the savings potential. A lot of entities now, for example, lighting as a service is a new opportunity, where if you look at lighting costs as well as lighting maintenance, you get companies that come in and say, we will provide you lighting as a service at an X amount. No maintenance, here's a cost reduction, we'll guarantee you the savings, we'll show this savings off your bill, etc., etc. So those initiatives are becoming more and more available to the end user, and the ability to
So
understand.
is this readily available?
Readily available through Broll. So we are pioneering the implementation of these blankets within property portfolios. So yes.
Okay, Mansi, does it speak to the Brawl experience that you were telling us about the other time?
it is.
Come in and experience the Brawl experience here.
Yeah, because I think also, twofold reasons. The one is around that ethos of the integration of and bringing in and partnering with SMMEs and innovators, technologists, engineers. I think we know that I'm a fan of engineers in principle.
Yeah.
And then also just around curating that experience. So we want our products, or I keep calling them products, but yeah, the properties are really our products. So you want your properties to have a certain look and feel, but an experience. Toby talks a lot about experience of properties, and these are the things that really impact. There's nothing bigger than walking into a center and feeling a certain way. The temperature fluctuations, the consistency, those are things that are unnecessary irritants, and we are able to sort of control these things very cost effectively, but also sustainably for the long term. Because I understand that this product is 100-year lifespan or something.
I think it's 30 plus years.
This is 30 years. You can have this for 30 years?
Yeah, fully
With
operational.
maintenance in between?
No.
No maintenance?
Free. No
it's
Oh,
maintenance.
so we
free.
eliminate the cost of maintenance.
No
Absolutely.
mechanical
That's amazing.
interventions. So
Okay.
whether 30 years, we're going to have a redeveloped center at that point. So really integrating the full life cycle of a building, and as a user, I appreciate that.
Okay. And then Bathobile, so we're speaking to the experience of properties. What is the future like?
Well, the future is it's twofold. It's one really around why people are using those spaces. So how do you bring people into those spaces and keep them there? And as Mansi was alluding to, you kind of feel like you like being there, but you don't know why. And so the real intangible thing about experience is that you shouldn't know, you shouldn't put your finger on it, but you should like to be in those spaces. And so as landlords fight for tenants, fight for income, it's going to be increasingly more competitive to actually get people in those spaces. They're going to be fighting for how they get the footfall into malls, how you get your employees back into the office, and all of those things are around the experience of what people are doing in those buildings.
Okay.
And so with cost savings that you can pass on back into your tenants, less maintenance around products that are long-standing, you're definitely in for a win.
Okay, and then Mitesh, just as a closing remark, do people exclusively come to Brawl for this? What is your word there for the constructors, for them to incorporate this with immediate effect, actually?
Yeah, so earlier your question was around the experience of
The properties.
the event.
Yeah.
And
okay, the event, yeah.
we don't get to see some of the building materials. You've got stands here that talk about building materials. So it's everything from the life cycle of when they put that first brick in the ground to the 50, 60, 70, 100-year facility. What are they putting in there that's going to bring this life cycle cost and sustainability of this facility down? So a lot of things like what's the use of sustainable materials in the building that they've used in 50 years' time. What will it happen? Mansi asked me a question earlier about the batteries. What's going to happen in 5 years' time when a battery car doesn't operate? Who's going to take care of it? How does it get recycled?
Yeah.
How is it integrated back into the ecosystem so that it's not something that has to be put into the ground, which is currently what we do, landfill. We need to be more innovative around how does a building start and end in its own cycle. And that talks a lot to what the space is being used for. How can you recreate the space? What can you do with the space going forward? We don't know what the next 50 years is going to look like, but we've got to look at planning of what, when we're not around, what will happen to these facilities. and how
That's
they
it.
will be taken care of and how they will be recycled or repurposed.
All right. Well, to my panel, thank you so much for being with me today. What a Brawl experience. So if you want to actually experience this as well, why don't you come over to the Big Five Construct Southern Africa right here at the Gallagher Convention where it's happening, or you can actually be in touch with Brawl Properties, right? And get all the information that you want to know. But thank you to our viewers for watching. We'll be back again with more updates.